He was a powerful chief who had everything: wealth, land, respect. She was just a poor maid who cleaned his floors. He humiliated her in ways that would break most people. But what he didn't know was that one act of cruelty would cost him everything. Why would a man with so much power end up on his knees before the woman he called worthless? And how did a maid with nothing find the strength to rise above a chief who thought he was untouchable? Sit back and find out as we dive into the story of how a rich chief humiliated his poor maid, and what she did next made him kneel. In the quiet village of Umwata lived a young woman named Agnes. She was just 23 years old, but her hands told the story of someone who had worked twice that long. Every morning before the first cock crowed, she woke up in the small servant quarters behind Chief Desmond's big compound, tied her wrapper tight around her waist, and began the day's endless work. Agnes was not just any maid. She scrubbed floors until her knees ached, cooked meals for a household that never thanked her, and washed clothes in cold water until her fingers went numb. Agnes would work from dawn until the moon came out, earning her pay the hard way. Life had never been kind to her. When she was only 15, her parents died during a cholera outbreak that swept through the village. Nobody came to help. No relatives offered to take them in. She was left alone with her younger sister, Julie, who was just 10 years old at the time. From that moment, Agnes became Julie's mother, her father, and her only hope. She hawked roasted corn by the roadside at first. Then she washed dishes at a local restaurant. When that wasn't enough, she begged Chief Desmond's head wife for work as a housemaid. And that was how she started scrubbing floors to survive. But no matter how hard things got, Agnes never complained. She would wake up at exactly 4:30 every morning when the air was still cool and the compound was silent. She would light the small kerosene lamp in her room, splash cold water on her face from the bucket by her mat, and step quietly into the main house through the back door that was never locked for her. By 5 a.m., she had already swept the large sitting room, the dining area, and the long corridor that led to Chief Desmond's private chambers. By 5:30, she was in the kitchen grinding pepper and peeling yams for the morning meal. By 6 o'clock, the aroma of frying plantains filled the compound, and Chief Desmond's wives began to stir in their separate rooms. Agnes moved through the house like a shadow. She knew where every pot belonged, which cup the chief preferred for his morning tea, and exactly how hot he liked his bath water. She knew when to speak and when to keep silent. Most times it was better to stay silent. Chief Desmond was not a small man. He was in his late 50s, with a thick gray beard and a belly that showed years of eating well while others went hungry. He owned half the farmland in Umwata and 3 large houses in the city. When he walked through the village square wearing his coral beads and embroidered agbada, people bowed. When he spoke at council meetings, no one dared interrupt. His word was law and he knew it. To him, Agnes was nothing more than furniture. Something useful but replaceable. He never called her by name. It was always you, or that girl, or sometimes just a snap of his fingers when he wanted something. She would appear, do what was needed, and disappear again into the background of his life. But Agnes had learned to survive in that background. She kept her head down, did her work well, and saved every kobo she could. At night, when she returned to her small room behind the main house, she would count the money hidden in a small tin under her mat. It was never much, but it was enough to buy Julie's school books and pay for her uniforms. Sometimes, when the house was quiet and everyone was asleep, Agnes would sit on the low wall outside her room and look up at the stars. She would whisper to herself, "One day things will change. One day Julie will finish school and get a good job. One day we will have our own house and I won't have to bow to anyone." It was a small hope, but it kept her going through the long days and the harsh words and the endless work that never seemed to be enough. Agnes didn't know it yet, but her suffering was about to end. Just not the way anyone expected. It was a Tuesday morning when Chief Desmond decided to host some of his business associates for breakfast. Agnes had prepared everything perfectly. The yam porridge was hot and well seasoned. The fried eggs were golden. The tea was steaming in the ceramic pot the chief reserved for important guests. She served the food quietly, placing each plate carefully on the long dining table. The men were talking loudly about land deals and politics. Nobody noticed her. Nobody ever did. She was about to return to the kitchen when Chief Desmond's voice cut through the air like a whip. "You, come here." Agnes stopped. Her heart began to beat faster. She turned slowly and walked back to the table. "Yes, sir," she said, keeping her eyes down. Chief Desmond touched the yam porridge with his finger and made a face. "This food is cold," he said. "Are you trying to disgrace me in front of my guests?" Agnes's eyes widened. The food was not cold. She had just brought it from the fire. But she knew better than to argue. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered. Let me warm it up. Warm it up. Chief Desmond stood up suddenly. The entire table went quiet. He picked up the bowl of yam porridge and poured it slowly onto the polished floor. The thick yellow liquid spread across the tiles like spilled paint. You're lucky I even let you work here, he said, his voice loud and sharp. Where else would a worthless girl like you go? Who else would feed someone as useless as you? Agnes stood frozen. Her hands were shaking. She could feel the eyes of all the men on her. Some looked away. Some smiled uncomfortably. One man cleared his throat like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. Clean this up, Chief Desmond said, sitting back down. And don't let me see your face again this morning. Agnes knelt down on the floor. She didn't have a rag with her, so she used the edge of her wrapper to wipe up the food. Her knees pressed into the wetness. Her eyes burned, but she didn't let the tears fall. Not yet. Not in front of them. Chief Desmond's senior wife, Mama Chica, stood by the kitchen door watching everything. She said nothing. She had learned many years ago that speaking up only brought trouble into her own life. It was better to stay silent. Safer. When Agnes finished cleaning, she stood up slowly and walked back to the kitchen. Her wrapper was stained yellow. Her knees hurt. But what hurt more was the laughter she heard from the dining room as the men went back to their conversation. She stood alone in the kitchen, leaning against the wall. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, I am not worthless. I am not useless. I am not nothing. But even as she said it, tears rolled down her cheeks. 3 weeks later, Chief Desmond announced he would be hosting a big celebration. It was the annual New Yam Festival, and as one of the most prominent chiefs in Umwada, his compound would be the center of everything. Important guests were coming from all over. Fellow chiefs, businessmen, politicians, even the local government chairman. For 5 days, Agnes worked without rest. She cooked. She cleaned. She arranged chairs and tables. She polished the chief's coral beads until they shined. She washed every curtain in the house. Her hands were raw. Her back ached. But she kept going. This was her job. This was survival. On the day of the celebration, the compound was full of people. Music played from large speakers. Women danced in expensive lace and wrappers. Men wore flowing igbadas and traditional caps. Chief Desmond sat in the center of it all, smiling widely, receiving gifts and greetings like a king. Agnes moved through the crowd with a tray of drinks. She wore her cleanest dress, but next to all the wealthy guests, she still looked like what she was, a poor housemaid. She kept her head down and did her work. As she approached a group of men sitting under a canopy, one of them gestured for a drink. Agnes stepped forward carefully, balancing the tray. But just as she reached him, the man turned suddenly to laugh at something his friend said. His elbow knocked the tray. A glass of red wine tipped over and spilled onto his white igbada. The man jumped up. "Ah, what is wrong with you?" Everyone turned to look. The music seemed to get quieter. Agnes froze, the tray shaking in her hands. Chief Desmond pushed through the crowd, his face twisted with anger. "What happened here?" he demanded. "This your maid poured wine on me," the man said, brushing at the stain. "I'm sorry, sir," Agnes said quickly. "It was an accident." He turned and... "Shut up." Chief Desmond's voice boomed across the compound. People stopped talking. Even the music stopped. He stepped closer to Agnes, his eyes burning with rage. "You clumsy fool. You're trying to embarrass me in front of my guests." "Sir, please, I didn't mean to." The slap came fast. It landed on her left cheek with a sharp crack that echoed in the sudden silence. Agnes stumbled backward. The tray fell from her hands and clattered to the ground. Her face burned. Her eyes watered. But it wasn't the pain of the slap that broke her. It was the shame. The way everyone was looking at her. The way no one said anything. The way Chief Desmond stood over her like she was dirt under his shoe. "Get out of my sight," he shouted. "You are nothing but trouble." For a long moment Agnes stood there. Her cheek was red. Her heart was pounding. But something inside her shifted. Something that had been bending for 8 years finally snapped. Slowly, she reached behind her back and untied her serving apron. She folded it carefully, smoothing out the wrinkles with trembling hands. Then she placed it on the table beside her. She looked up at Chief Desmond. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I'm sorry I wasn't good enough for you, sir." Then she turned and walked toward the gate. Her legs felt weak, but she didn't stop. She didn't look back. Behind her, Chief Desmond laughed. It was a loud, mocking laugh. "Where will you go?" he called after her. "You are nothing without me. Nothing." But Agnes kept walking. She walked through the gate, past the security man who watched with wide eyes, and out onto the dusty road. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't know what would happen next. But she knew one thing for certain. She would never bow to Chief Desmond again. Agnes and Julie moved out of the small room they had been renting near Chief Desmond's compound. They couldn't afford it anymore without Agnes's wages. They found a single room in a poorer part of the village where the rent was cheaper but the walls were cracked and the roof leaked when it rained. Agnes took any job she could find. She washed clothes for a woman who sold vegetables in the market. She swept the floors of a provision store every evening. On weekends, she helped clean a small restaurant near the motor park. Julie stopped going to school because they couldn't pay the fees. Money was always tight. Some nights, they ate only Gary and sugar because there was nothing else. Julie would lie on the mat they shared and cry softly into her wrapper. Agnes would hold her and whisper, "We will be fine. Just wait. Things will get better." But inside, Agnes was breaking. Late at night, when Julie was asleep, dark thoughts would creep into her mind. Maybe Chief Desmond was right. Maybe she was nothing. Maybe she had made a terrible mistake by walking away. At least in his house they had food every day. At least there was a roof that didn't leak. One evening, after working all day washing clothes until her hands were wrinkled and sore, Agnes sat outside their small room on an old wooden stool. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. She was so tired she could barely keep her eyes open. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. "God, I just need a sign. Something. Anything to show me I'm worth more than what he said. Show me I didn't make a mistake. Show me there's something better than this." Her voice cracked. Tears rolled down her face. She was so tired of fighting, so tired of being strong. She leaned her head against the wall and fell asleep right there under the darkening sky. The next morning, Agnes woke up to the sound of knocking. She opened her eyes slowly. The sun was already up. Julie was standing by the door looking nervous. "Sister, someone is here," Julie said softly. Agnes stood up quickly, wiping her face. Her body ached from sleeping sitting up all night. She opened the door. A man in a dark suit stood there holding a brown envelope. He looked out of place in their poor neighborhood with his polished shoes and clean-shaven face. "Good morning," he said. "Are you Agnes Okafor? Daughter of the late Mr. and Mrs. Okafor?" Agnes's heart stopped. Nobody had called her by her full name in years. Nobody had mentioned her parents in even longer. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm Agnes." The man smiled gently. "My name is Barrister Emeka. I've been searching for you for 3 years." Agnes stared at him. Her mind was spinning. "Searching for me? Why?" "May I come in?" he asked. "I have something very important to discuss with you." Agnes led Barrister Emeka into their small room. She was embarrassed by how little they had. One mat on the floor. A small wooden box that held their clothes. A kerosene stove in the corner. But the lawyer didn't seem to notice or care. He sat on the only stool they had and opened his brown envelope. "Miss Agnes," he began, "your father had a younger brother. His name was Chief Emmanuel Okafor." Agnes blinked. "I never heard of him." "That's because he left Nigeria over 40 years ago," the lawyer explained. "He went to America. He worked very hard, started businesses, and became very successful. But he never married. He never had children. 6 months ago he passed away." Agnes felt a strange sadness for an uncle she had never known. "I'm sorry to hear that. Before he died," Barrister Emeka continued, "he made a will. He had been trying to find his brother, your father, for many years. When he finally got word that his brother had passed away and left behind 2 daughters, he made a decision." The lawyer pulled out several documents and spread them on the floor. "His will says everything he owns should go to his brother's children. That means you and your sister." Agnes stared at the papers. She saw official-looking stamps and signatures. Property deeds. Bank statements. Investment documents. The numbers were so large they didn't look real. "What are you saying?" she whispered. The lawyer smiled. "I'm saying your uncle left you and Julie everything. 3 houses in America. 2 properties here in Nigeria. Bank accounts. Investments. It's worth millions of naira, Miss Agnes." The room started spinning. Agnes grabbed the edge of the mat to steady herself. "This can't be real," she said. "Things like this don't happen to people like me." "It is very real," Barrister Emeka said kindly. He pulled out his identification card and several other documents proving who he was. "Your uncle wanted his family taken care of. He wanted to make sure you would never struggle again." Julie, who had been standing by the door in shocked silence, suddenly screamed, Sister, we're rich." She started jumping up and down. But Agnes just sat there. She couldn't move. She couldn't speak. Tears poured down her face, but she wasn't sure if they were tears of joy or disbelief or relief or all three at once. Finally she whispered, "We're going to be okay." The lawyer spent the next hour explaining everything. There would be paperwork to complete, bank accounts to open, properties to transfer. But it was all real. It was all legal. It was all theirs. After he left, Agnes sat quietly on the mat holding the documents in her shaking hands. Julie was still dancing and singing in the corner. But Agnes's mind was somewhere else. She wasn't thinking about herself. She was thinking about all the other girls like her. All the other maids being treated like nothing in big compounds across the village. All the other people who were told they were worthless because they were poor. She looked up at Julie and said softly, "I know what I have to do." Agnes didn't go around the village announcing her new wealth. She didn't buy flashy cars or throw big parties. She moved quietly, carefully, like someone who understood that money could disappear as quickly as it came. The first thing she did was move Julie back to school. Not just any school, a good private school in the city where the classrooms had chairs and the teachers actually taught. Julie cried with happiness on her first day. Then Agnes bought a small but comfortable house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing too big. Nothing that would draw attention. Just 3 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, and a sitting room where they could receive guests with dignity. But what Agnes did next surprised everyone. She started helping people. She paid school fees for children whose parents couldn't afford it. She gave money to widows in the market to start small businesses. When she heard about a woman who used to be a housemaid and was struggling to feed her children, Agnes hired her to work in her new house. But she paid her 3 times what Chief Desmond used to pay. And she treated her with respect. "Please," Agnes would say. "You don't have to call me madam. Just call me Sister Agnes." Word began to spread through the village like smoke from a cooking fire. People started talking. "That's Agnes. Chief Desmond's former maid. I heard she came into some money. She's different now. Did you see her at the market? She was helping Mama Ngozi pay for her daughter's hospital bill." Agnes carried herself differently too. She dressed in simple but beautiful clothes. Nothing too expensive. Nothing showy. But there was something about the way she walked now. Something about the way she looked people in the eye. It wasn't pride. It was something deeper. It was the confidence of someone who finally knew their own worth. One afternoon, Agnes was at the market buying vegetables when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Is that not Chief Desmond's former housemaid?" She turned to see 2 of the chief's friends, men who had been at that terrible breakfast where he poured food on the floor. They were staring at her with confused expressions. "Good afternoon, sirs," Agnes said with a small smile. Then she paid for her vegetables and walked away. That evening, one of those men went to Chief Desmond's compound and mentioned casually, "I saw your former maid today. She's looking well. Very well." Chief Desmond was sitting in his favorite chair, fanning himself with a newspaper. He barely looked up. "That girl? She's probably washing clothes somewhere and managed to buy one decent dress." The man shook his head. "I don't think so. She was at the market spending money like it was nothing. And people were greeting her with respect. Something has changed." Chief Desmond laughed. "What can that girl possibly have? She walked away from my house with nothing. She is nothing." But even as he said it, a small seed of curiosity planted itself in his mind. What if something really had changed? What if Agnes Okafor was not the same helpless girl who used to scrub his floors? He pushed the thought away. It was impossible. Wasn't it? While Agnes's life was quietly blooming like a flower after rain, Chief Desmond's world was beginning to crack. It started small. A business partner he had trusted for 15 years suddenly disappeared with a large sum of money they had invested together. Chief Desmond went to the man's house only to find it empty. No forwarding address. No explanation. Just gone. Then his farm started having problems. A strange disease killed half his yam crops. His cassava fields dried up even though there had been enough rain. The village herbalist came and said the land was angry, but Chief Desmond dismissed it as superstition. His eldest son, who had always been quiet and obedient, started talking back to him. One evening at dinner, when Chief Desmond raised his voice at one of the maids, his son stood up and said, "Father, must you always treat people like this?" Chief Desmond was so shocked he couldn't even respond. His son had never challenged him before. Never. His wives started whispering among themselves. They would stop talking when he entered a room. They looked at him differently now. Not with fear exactly, but with something else. Something like disappointment. The village elders began having meetings without inviting him. When he found out and confronted them, they made polite excuses. "Ah, Chief, we didn't want to disturb you. We know you're busy." But he could see it in their eyes. They were pulling away from him. His debts began piling up. The money he lost to his business partner. The cost of trying to save his dying crops. Loans he had taken expecting good harvest that never came. Within 3 months, Chief Desmond was in serious financial trouble. His pride wouldn't let him admit it to anyone. He kept dressing in his expensive clothes and coral beads. He kept hosting small gatherings to maintain appearances. But inside he was panicking. He tried to replace Agnes. He hired a new housemaid, a young girl from a neighboring village. She lasted 2 weeks before running away because he shouted at her for serving his tea too hot. He hired another. She left after 3 days when he accused her of stealing food she hadn't stolen. A third maid came, stayed 1 week and left without even collecting her wages. People in the village began to talk. That house is cursed. Ever since he publicly shamed Agnes and slapped her in front of everyone, nothing has gone right for him. "It's the ancestors," one old woman said. "They're punishing him for his wickedness." Chief Desmond heard the rumors and dismissed them loudly. "Superstition. Foolishness," he would shout. But late at night, alone in his big house with his silent wives, he wondered. He wondered if maybe there was some truth to it. Then came the final blow. A letter arrived from the bank. Chief Desmond opened it with trembling hands. It said he had 2 weeks to pay his outstanding loans or the bank would seize his ancestral land. The land that had been in his family for 4 generations. The land that gave him his title as chief. He sat down heavily in his chair. His hands were shaking. 2 weeks. Where could he possibly get that much money in 2 weeks? He thought of all his friends. All the men he had helped over the years. All the people who had eaten in his house and praised his generosity. Surely one of them would help him now. But when he started making calls, the responses were all the same. Excuses. Apologies. Nobody had money to lend. Nobody wanted to get involved. For the first time in his life, Chief Desmond felt real fear. The fear of losing everything. The fear of becoming nothing. The very thing he had once called Agnes. Chief Desmond sat in his compound on a Sunday afternoon, staring at nothing. His chest felt tight. His mind was racing. The deadline was 5 days away. 5 days to save everything he had built. Everything his fathers had built. An old friend, Chief Obi from the neighboring village, came to visit. They sat under the mango tree drinking palm wine in silence for a long time. Finally, Chief Obi spoke. "Desmond, I've heard about your troubles." Chief Desmond said nothing. His jaw was tight. "There is someone who might be able to help you," Chief Obi continued carefully. "She's been helping many people in the village quietly. Paying school fees. Giving loans that people can actually pay back. Helping families in trouble." Chief Desmond looked up. "Who?" Chief Obi paused. "Agnes. Your former housemaid." Chief Desmond's face hardened like stone. "That girl?" He stood up suddenly, knocking over his cup of palm wine. "Never. I will never go begging to a housemaid." Chief Obi stood up too. "Pride is a dangerous thing, my friend. Sometimes the help we need comes from places we don't expect." "She is nothing," Chief Desmond shouted. "She was a nobody when she worked for me and she's a nobody now." Chief Obi looked at him sadly. "If you say so." He picked up his walking stick and left without another word. Days passed like years. Chief Desmond tried everything. He went to banks, but his credit was already too damaged. He went to distant relatives, but they had heard about his financial troubles and suddenly had problems of their own. He even went to a money lender who charged outrageous interest rates, but even that man turned him down. "Sorry, Chief," the money lender said with a smile that wasn't really a smile. "The amount you're asking for is too much. And frankly, I'm not sure you can pay it back." 4 days before the deadline. Then 3 days. Then 2. On the night before the final day, Chief Desmond couldn't sleep. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling. His wives were in their own rooms. His children had stopped visiting. The house felt empty and cold even though it was the same house that had always been full of noise and life. He thought about his father and his grandfather. Men who had held this land with dignity. Men who had been respected not just for their wealth but for their character. What would they think of him now? A man about to lose everything because of his own pride and cruelty? He thought about Agnes. The way she used to wake up before dawn to start working. The way she never complained no matter how harshly he treated her. The way she had walked away with her head held high even after he slapped her in front of everyone. Maybe Chief Obi was right. Maybe pride was a dangerous thing. Just before sunrise, Chief Desmond made his decision. He got up, bathed and dressed in his finest traditional attire. the embroidered igbata, the coral beads, the red cap of a titled chief. If he was going to humble himself, he would at least look like he still had some dignity. He got into his car and asked the driver, "Do you know where Agnes Okafor lives now?" The driver, a young man who had worked for him for 5 years, hesitated. Then he said quietly, "Yes, sir. Everyone knows. She lives in the new estate off the main road. Take me there." As the car drove through the village, Chief Desmond noticed something. People were staring. Some pointed. Some whispered to each other. Everyone knew where he was going. Everyone knew why. When the car pulled up to Agnes's house, Chief Desmond felt his breath catch. It was a nice house. Not as big as his, but well built and beautiful. The compound was clean. Flowers grew along the walkway. A young girl, Julie, was sweeping the yard. Then he saw Agnes. She was in the small garden wearing a simple dress, tending to some plants. She was laughing at something Julie had said. Chief Desmond sat in the car for a full minute. His hands gripped the door handle. His heart was pounding. Could he really do this? Could he really ask for help from someone he had treated like dirt? He closed his eyes. He thought about the ancestral land. He thought about his title. His legacy. He opened the car door and stepped out. There was no other choice. Agnes looked up from her garden and saw the black car parked in front of her gate. She recognized it immediately. Everyone in Umwata knew Chief Desmond's car. She watched as the door opened and the chief himself stepped out wearing his full traditional regalia. For a moment their eyes met. Agnes felt something flutter in her chest. Not fear, not anger, but something else. Something like pity mixed with calm power. She straightened up, brushed the dirt from her hands and walked slowly toward the gate. Julie had stopped sweeping and was staring with wide eyes. "Chief Desmond," Agnes said quietly. Her voice was steady. "What brings you to my house?" The chief opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. His throat felt like it was closing. All the words he had practiced in the car suddenly disappeared from his mind. He looked at Agnes, really looked at her, for perhaps the first time in all the years she had worked for him. She was different. She stood differently. Her eyes were clear and direct. There was no fear in them. No shame. Just calm certainty. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "I need to speak with you. Please." Agnes studied him for a moment. Then she opened the gate. "Come inside." She led him into her sitting room. It was simple but comfortable. Family photos hung on the walls. Julie's school certificates were framed and displayed proudly. A Bible sat on the small center table next to a vase of fresh flowers. Chief Desmond looked around and felt something twist in his chest. This was a home. A real home. Not just a big house filled with expensive things and empty respect. A home with love and dignity. "Please sit," Agnes said, gesturing to a chair. "Can I get you some water?" "No," Chief Desmond said quickly. "Then, yes, please." Agnes poured water from a clay pot into a glass and handed it to him. His hands were shaking so much that some of the water spilled. He couldn't drink. His throat was too tight. Agnes sat across from him and waited. She didn't say anything. She just waited. Finally, Chief Desmond spoke. "Agnes, I've come to ask for your help." The words felt like broken glass coming out of his mouth. Agnes's face showed nothing. "What kind of help?" He swallowed hard. "I'm in trouble. Financial trouble. I have debts. The bank is going to take my land if I don't pay them within 24 hours. I need money. A lot of money." He looked down at his hands. "I'll pay you back. I promise. With interest. Just please." Agnes raised one hand gently and he stopped talking. "Chief Desmond," she said softly, "do you remember what you told me? The last time I saw you?" He closed his eyes. He knew exactly what she was talking about. "You said I was nothing without you," Agnes continued. Her voice wasn't angry. It was just stating a fact. "You told me I was worthless. You poured food on the floor and made me clean it up while your guests laughed. You slapped me in front of the entire village because a cup of wine spilled." Chief Desmond's hands began to tremble. Shame washed over him like hot water. "For 8 years I worked in your house," Agnes said. "I woke up before everyone else. I went to sleep after everyone else. I cooked your food. I washed your clothes. I cleaned your floors. And not once, not one single time, did you ever call me by my name. Not once did you say thank you. Not once did you see me as a human being." A tear rolled down Chief Desmond's cheek. He tried to wipe it away but more came. "I'm sorry," he whispered. His voice was broken. "I'm so sorry, Agnes. I was cruel. I was wicked. I treated you like you were nothing because I thought my money and my title made me better than you. He looked up at her, his eyes red. But I was wrong. You are worth more than I ever was. You are better than I ever was. His body began to shake. The weight of years of cruelty, years of pride, years of thinking he was above everyone else, it all came crashing down on him at once. Slowly, like a building collapsing, Chief Desmond slid from the chair onto his knees. This proud man who had never bowed to anyone in his life. This chief who demanded respect from everyone around him. This man who had made Agnes feel worthless for so many years. He was on his knees before her. Please, he sobbed. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Please help me. I'm begging you. Agnes stood up. She looked down at him. On the table beside her were several bundles of money, the payment she had just collected from selling one of her uncle's properties. She picked them up and held them in her hands. For a long moment she said nothing. She just looked at the man on his knees before her. The man who had broken her spirit so many times. The man who had called her nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. It carried the weight of someone who had walked through fire and come out stronger. Stand up, Chief Desmond. He looked up at her, confused. I said stand up, she repeated. I'm not like you. I won't watch you kneel before me and enjoy it. Slowly, Chief Desmond got to his feet. His legs were shaking. Tears still ran down his face. Agnes held out the bundles of money. I'll help you, she said. Not because you deserve it. Not because you treated me well. Not even because you apologized. She paused and looked him directly in the eyes. I'll help you because I know what it feels like to have nothing. I know what it feels like to be desperate. And I promised myself that if I ever had the power to help someone, I would, even if that someone had hurt me. Chief Desmond took the money with trembling hands. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. But understand this, Agnes continued, her voice steady. This doesn't erase what you did. This doesn't make us even. This is me choosing to be better than you were. This is me choosing mercy over revenge. This is me choosing to be human in a way you never chose to be with me. Chief Desmond nodded. Tears continued to stream down his face. Thank you, he whispered. God bless you, Agnes. Thank you. Agnes walked him to the door. As he stepped out into the afternoon sun, she said one last thing. Chief Desmond, I hope you learned something from this. I hope you remember that the people you treat as nothing today might be the only ones willing to help you tomorrow. I hope you remember that your title and your money don't make you better than anyone. They just make you more responsible to treat others with kindness. Chief Desmond turned to look at her one more time. The young woman he had treated as furniture. The young woman whose worth he had never seen. The young woman who was now saving him from losing everything. I will remember, he said. I promise you I will remember. As his car drove away, Agnes stood in her doorway watching until it disappeared down the road. Julie came and stood beside her. Sister, why did you help him? Julie asked quietly. After everything he did to you? Agnes was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, not a bitter smile but a peaceful one. Because, Julie, when you rise above your suffering, you get to choose what kind of person you become. He chose to be cruel when he had power. I'm choosing to be merciful now that I do. She put her arm around her sister's shoulders. And that, she said softly, makes all the difference. Inside the car, Chief Desmond held the money in his lap and wept. He wept for his cruelty. He wept for his pride. He wept for all the years he had wasted treating people as less than human. But most of all, he wept because a woman he had called worthless had just shown him the true meaning of worth. And he knew he would never be the same again.